for long commitments like that, have family back home or at bases in Germany and other places, and they're concerned about how long. You remember that the commitment of sending troops into Bosnia was supposed to be a brief one, and that has extended on for years now, and there's no indication whether this will be a brief commitment or not. The Marines that you are seeing now are part of a ready group. They this is part of what used to be called the MedMARG, the Mediterranean Marine Amphibious Ready Group, and it's now been shortened to the Mediterranean ARG. They dropped the M off the front of it, but they stay as part of the NATO agreement in the Mediterranean area on a regular basis year-round. So this group just between the Serbs and the Kosovar civilians, but also between the KLA and any Serb personnel that stay behind. So they have to ensure that there's a peace there. They have to try to help prepare the way for the larger Army contingent to come.
Force, typically based in the U.S. Most of the men and material will get to shore. Again, it's called an LPAC. It is a landing craft air cushion, and perhaps you see why it's called an air cushion. It moves on a cushion of air. So this is kind of an up-close and personal look at it from our vantage point here. It can move over either land or water. Right now over land, and now about to land on the Aegean and head back out to the USS Kearsarge, where it will get another 175-mile journey up into Macedonia. So they put those on these trucks, and then off further.
Looks like maybe deuce and a half, 2.5 ton trucks that are coming off that are going to carry more equipment. But I wonder if they've given an indication where they plan to have one long convoy taking them up to Skopje in Macedonia, or whether they're going to break it up into segments to try not to block up the roads too much.
Yeah, our understanding is that they definitely will go in segments. As you pointed out, it's going to take them 2.5 days, and what they want to do is disrupt as little as they possibly can. And so I think they're going to get a reasonable sized convoy as the Marines take their first big step here along the shores of Greece. That is the latest. I'm Jeff Flock, CNN, reporting live from Litohoro, Greece.
First U.S. Marines have arrived on shore with tons of equipment. They will, over the next few days, be heading north through Greece into Macedonia, where they will begin clearing the way for peacekeepers who are expected to go into Kosovo province. All of this the result.
Visitors to the Marina border crossing between Albania and Yugoslavia. No member of AFOR, the NATO-led humanitarian force in Albania, had ever traveled this close to the dangerous Marina crossing, the site of recent sniper attacks and an errant NATO bombing. Fighter jets, but no bombs. Relative peace and quiet that could soon be broken, however, by the sounds of thousands of tractors, cars, buses, and feet.
Days. I don't know how long they'll be here, but
waiting for permission and the peace talks to finish up and them to make an agreement. And we're ready to go, and we're all excited.
What do you expect to find when you get in? You got a long road ahead of you. You still got a couple hours before you pull out of here, correct?
That's correct. A couple hours here waiting for our turn in the serials to leave, and then we've got about a 187-mile road march up to Macedonia.
Right, which will take maybe 4 or 5 hours?
Between 5 and 6 hours.
I see. What do you expect when you finally get to Kosovo?
Well, we're excited about going. We expect that the Serbians are going to live up to the peace treaty, that they will be withdrawn and move out, and we will move in and provide into our sector and do the missions that are required of us up there. And my biggest concern is the mine threat that's up in the area. There's lots of mines. I'm worried that if we
side of the airport, the first contingent, there was a group of Black Hawk helicopters that arrived about 20 minutes ago, half a dozen of those, and now we're seeing the heavy equipment starting to be lifted in. 2 Chinook helicopters have just landed, downloading jeeps, and we're expecting some howitzers and other tanks and things like that are going to be brought in shortly. Joining me now is Major Eric Gunnis. Major, how much men and equipment are coming in here today?
Well, we have 6 howitzers that'll be coming in on this lift. We have approximately 500 to 700 soldiers that will be coming also. Simultaneously, along with the airlift, we have a ground movement coming up from Albania, M1 tanks and Bradleys that will come in and will stage out of here.
This comes at the same time as the landing occurs in Greece. These 2 units will meet up here?
Right. The Marines will meet here, and then the U.S. forces will be flown in from Tirana. They will road march from Tirana, Albania, and they will also fly the pieces of that arriving. We'll stage here, and then once the order is given, we will move forward.
Now, the much talked about Apache helicopters are moving from Albania to Macedonia. What role will they play here on the ground?
Well, they will be in a support, a reserve role. Obviously, they will allow the forces a great amount of force protection.
Previously, they have closed the airport, the commercial airport, when military men and equipment were coming in. But today, the airspace is open. The commercial flights are operating. I just saw one take off about 5 minutes ago. So the military and the civilian flights out of here are coexisting for the first time in a long time. During times of severe tension, there were a lot of canceled flights here because the airspace overhead was being used. But apparently with the Black Hawk helicopters coming in and the others, well, the airspace is extremely crowded. It is going to be a lot of activity going on in the air, but the Army says that their air controllers can handle the situation and that civilian air traffic, in addition to the military, can operate. French and the British and the Italian troops that were already here as part of the NATO peacekeeping force. The helicopters came in about an hour and a half ago. First, the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopters came in. They came into the landing zone and made sure everything was okay. And then the Chinook helicopters, which are the Army's heavy lift helicopters, came in, bringing howitzers, bringing jeeps, bringing some intelligence gathering equipment, satellite dishes and things like that, moving in and dropping them down. And the Chinooks were also filled with troops from the 1st Infantry Division. They came off after they dropped their equipment. They sat down beside the equipment, and then those soldiers came out. This is the first of probably more than 1,000 soldiers who will come in to Skopje today. Over the next few days, there will be even more airlifts like this. But the ground movement is also occurring from Albania. With troops that are coming in, they will be moves out here aboard Chinook helicopters, bringing in some heavy weapons and some other equipment. That will be going on throughout the day here in Macedonia as this force of 50,000 is built up. So there is going to be a lot of noise, and there's going to be a lot of work going on here where they're bringing the men and equipment in. The first helicopters that came down brought about 100 men with their full packs on. They came off the helicopters and moved into the camp here that has been ready for them. So the helicopters will continue to come in here throughout the day. They expect about 1,000 U.S. Army's troops inside Macedonia by the time midnight arrives. So they're going to be coming across the Albania border where they have been. We're also expecting in another hour and a half or so the Apache helicopters, a squadron of them, is going to be flying from Albania and based here as a support operation, not used for verification, but in case the verification goes awry, they will be the military punch and the backup power to ensure that the evacuation routes are taken properly. So they will be part of the NATO operation being operated out of here from Macedonia. As I said before, there are 4 evacuation routes that have been set up. These were the military technical meetings, and this was part of the strategy that was set up to get the Yugoslav forces out and the NATO forces in at the same time. This is going to be very well orchestrated over the coming days, and we'll probably see in the next 2 days or less than a week some real strong preparations being made here on the ground for the NATO forces. The Americans are coming in. Artillery pieces and vehicles, and also troops, a lot of troops. They estimate that there will be somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 U.S. soldiers here by the end of the day today. Now, while they may not be the vanguard and the first going in, it's probably going to be British paratroopers that do that. The American contingent does make up an important part of KFOR. When you consider the Apache helicopters, what they can provide as far as security from the air, both day and night, for any NATO force, peacekeeping force that goes in, it may make a lot of these soldiers sleep better at night. But as it stands right now, the Americans are mostly here. We expect another large group coming in from Albania over land, not being flown in by helicopter.
Anybody, and this is, we don't want to start losing anybody now.
Now we know that, of course, a British general is leading it, General Mike Jackson. How important are British troops in this?
Well, they're vital to it. It's the headquarters of
M1A1 tanks, armored personnel carriers, jeeps, and artillery pieces. The heavier items ferried in by the large C-17 aircraft. Each is huge but can only carry a single tank. NATO forces could enter Kosovo as soon as Friday. It would be the British paratroop battalion who would go in first, followed by French, German, Italian, and American forces. Just how rapidly NATO moves in is determined in part by how fast Yugoslav forces move out.
They signed up during the military technical agreement talks to do that, so now the task is theirs to achieve.
As the American forces move in, young soldiers, many who have never faced a combat situation, are about to head into harm's way.
My first thoughts weren't actually this. I never imagined this, but it's pretty nice here. It's pretty nice. I'm in the infantry. My job is to find the enemy and kill him. That's what I do.
The arrival of U.S. Marines and Army forces in Macedonia signaled that the next step, a move to Kosovo, could be very near. With the withdrawal of Yugoslav forces, the movement into Kosovo could be a matter of hours or days. Tom Intier, CNN, Skopje, Macedonia.
Stationed, who will they take orders from and who will pay the bill? Russia's special envoy to the Balkans says the answers are coming soon.
We hope that today or tomorrow the talks will produce a plan for cooperation that we can put into action.
Mr. Chernomyrdin is being praised by the West for his role in the peace process. But in his own parliament, he's being called a traitor. In a non-binding vote Thursday, the lower house demanded he be fired. Meanwhile, the Defense Ministry issued an order to prepare a brigade of paratroopers for Kosovo. Should the U.S. and Russia resolve their differences, the first of what could be as many as 10,000 Russian troops would be ready to move out in 7 days. Steve Harrigan, CNN, Moscow.
No choice, one way out, north. The Yugoslav army, unbeaten in the field by the KLA but smashed from the sky by NATO, left Podjevo. Some of them, reservists, conscripts, were relieved to leave behind the horror that has been Kosovo and the deeds perpetrated by certain units. This, if things go to plan, is just the beginning. We crisscrossed central Kosovo all day and it was clear. The military and police were on the move. It won't be easy. In certain areas, they are having to use dirt tracks, but from what we saw, the ability to communicate and organize will be sufficient. The senior general of the Pristina Corps said he was acting on orders from Supreme Command. We will leave, he said, and UN troops will come to protect the Serb population. Some aren't waiting and are also leaving, but this trickle is not yet a flood, even as the army withdrawal gathers pace. This scene is being repeated across Kosovo on this historic day, around Pristina, around Podjevo, and here in Mitrovica. We can see on the ground what NATO can see from the air. They're leaving. Tim Marshall, Sky News, Kosovo.
Up of forces in countries neighbouring Yugoslavia who were assembling while political events unfolded. NATO leaders praised those who'd taken part in the air campaign. Final preparations for the move into Kosovo. The hopes of the refugees rest on their shoulders. Graham Leach, Sky News.
Were a few defiant gestures and salutes from the retreating soldiers. But there is no disguising just how humiliating is their withdrawal from the province they have ravaged. From early this afternoon, convoys of Yugoslav soldiers were on the move. And within 11 days, the pullout must be complete, and Belgrade's rule of Kosovo will be over. With that mandate in place, NATO reinforcements are deploying in the southern Balkans, getting ready for a peacekeeping mission of immense complexity. But whatever the perils of their entry into Kosovo, it seems they will not have to fight their way in through organised Serb resistance. Robert Moore, ITN.
It'll be... This evening, the elite infantry of the British Army is on the move, for NATO's is finally over. Throughout the streets of Chinook and Puma, as soon as the order, who will almost certainly be the first across the border, airlifted to secure strategic high ground overlooking the main road to Kosovo's capital, Pristina, where they hope the British headquarters in Kosovo can be established within days.
These troops are just being moved within Macedonia, but in effect, the airlift to Kosovo has begun.
And for these men, the orders to enter the province should now come in the next 36 hours.
I don't think any of the lads here are that worried about the potential for anything to go wrong, because we're trained and we know what we've got to do. We're just going to get on with it.
And they are preparing for anything. The heavy armour is also on the move tonight.
British forces will act decisively and robustly in an impartial way to be quite clear as to what they have to do. They're fully trained, equipped and manned to get on with it. I know their morale is very high.
We filmed one Chinook today throwing out decoy flares, practicing its defence against ground attack. We remain vulnerable, said the pilot. It only takes one angry Serb with a shoulder-launched missile. This evening, NATO and Yugoslav military officials met to work out the details of the Serb withdrawal and NATO's entry. They reached agreement, and it seemed NATO's forces may move in at dawn tomorrow. But later came a hitch. The Germans apparently insisting their forces take a more leading role. The first troops are now likely to cross the border early on Saturday morning. Mark Austin, ITN, Macedonia.
To see Serb troops retreating from Kosovo. Belgrade had until late today to start its troops moving and 11 days to have them out of Kosovo altogether. NATO says it's satisfied now it can suspend its air campaign. NATO troops are now gathering in the region, poised to enter Kosovo once their final preparations are complete. And NATO's eager that deployment should happen rapidly. It's concerned departing Serb forces could leave in their wake a security vacuum that could be exploited by the KLA. These American troops could enter Kosovo in the next few days. Janet Barry, BBC News.
With thousands of landmines. So, on the very eve of their advance into Kosovo, the British have been on last-minute training to prepare for the hazards ahead. Not only mines, but also booby traps, unexploded shells and bombs, and, of course, the possibility that some Serbs may decide to stay behind and fight.
Obviously, you get the odd minor fractions who are determined to stay on and fight. But personally, I think that the majority of the Serb forces will add enough of the bombardment they've been receiving for the past so many weeks and just crack on.
Hopefully Milosevic has still got a good enough and firm enough grip that they'll listen to him and they'll all be pulled out. So we don't really anticipate any troubles, but obviously we've done the training.
Today, NATO commanders arrived at the Kosovo border for more talks with their counterparts from the Yugoslav army. This time, they were discussing details of the road from here to the Kosovo capital, Pristina, trying to get more information about booby traps and mines along it. Meanwhile, the Americans are massing here too. Swarms of their helicopters fill the skies over Macedonia. Black Hawks and the much-feared Apaches, which have flown in from Albania. It looks like an invasion force, but the generals in charge are praying their men will not have to fire a shot. So far, NATO's air campaign in the Balkans has been casualty-free. Ironically, keeping the peace in Kosovo may be far more dangerous than making war. Ben Brown, BBC News, Bloodsay on the Kosovo-Macedonia border.
Draft resolution, after which the international peacekeeping force KFOR can roll into Kosovo. The military technical agreement between Yugoslavia and the G8 foresees a three-stage pull-out. An international peace presence is readying itself